The Democratic Party establishment has made it pretty clear that they're not too keen on the idea of progressive Berniecrats challenging incumbent Democrats in 2018. Now, to kind of give you an example of this, Claire McCaskill recently discussed how she was worried about facing a primary challenge from the left, and then Real Clear Politics alleges that the left should just leave Joe Manchin alone. Now, additionally, we're learning that Senator Dianne Feinstein is losing support among her constituents, which is actually surprising to me that this didn't happen even sooner, considering the way that she defended how the NSA violates the Fourth Amendment by spying on citizens, yet she condemned the CIA when she found out that the CIA was spying on senators. But, I mean, putting that aside, even governors are expressing fears about progressives applying ideological purity tests in the South in 2018. And they contend that the rise of progressives is generating fear and nervousness in the South in places like Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee, where some promising Democratic candidates who are looking at running statewide in 2018 could face resistance from the left. Now, they claim that this is nonsensical because Democrats have to be conservative in the South, but I mean, they fail to acknowledge polling that finds that certain policies, like raising the minimum wage, expanding Social Security, I mean, these policies play well everywhere. Since states in the South are traditionally more conservative, Democrats think that they should be given a free pass to be as corporatist and conservative as they want. Unacceptable. Now, to be fair to them, the fears of these corporate stooges aren't unfounded because progressives will be posing challenges to corporatist establishment Democrats from the left, because we've recently seen the explosion of groups like Justice Democrats, Brand New Congress, We Will Replace You, Draft Bernie, and Our Revolution, just to name a few, and these groups are essential because the DNC won't embrace progressives, and the new DNC transition team was stacked with Hillary Clinton surrogates and staffers, and just one Berniecrat, and it wasn't until they received criticism that they decided to add a couple of more progressives to their transition team. So I mean, the overall point is that we're done waiting for the Democratic Party to change. We're now taking over the party, we are taking action, we're taking matters into our own hands, and we will be here to challenge them from the left, because that's what you do. If you champion left-wing policies that are populist, you will win in red states and blue states. It doesn't matter. You will win because these are ideas that are popular, that resonate. Now, after these centrist corporatist Democrats saw the rise of multiple progressive groups that are planning to challenge them in 2018, well, they sent out a distress signal to corporate media saying, hey, you've got to help us, you got to do some propaganda. And of course, like the corporate media always does, it responded and came to their defense. So recently, NBC published an article where they tried to paint progressives as radicals, saying that the more radical strain of Bernie Sanders' movement still believes that he would have won, as if that's so unreasonable or has been disproven. But I mean, when you actually dive into this article, it gets worse than that. So journalist Alex Seitzwald alleges that the disaffected left is as or more interested in remaking the Democratic Party as it is in fighting Trump, as if we're incapable of focusing on two goals at once. And let me just say this, the implication here is that, well, you know, these progressives, they claim to be liberal, but they attack Democrats more than they attack Republicans. But what you fail to realize is that if Democrats had their act together, Republicans would not be in power. We would not have a President Donald Trump right now. So, yeah, I think that Democrats deserve to be criticized and ostracized nonstop until they get their act together or until we take over the party. So, please, I mean, nobody's going to shed a tear for Democrats. They did this to themselves. And now it's time that, you know, after focusing so much on Republicans as they moved further and further to the right and became more crazy, we didn't realize just how out of touch the Democratic Party was, too. So I'm sorry, but nobody's buying your bullshit. We have to criticize Democrats, and we also have to hold Donald Trump accountable. But what he then tried to do was do a character assassination of one of the founders of Justice Democrats. He states, for Justice Democrats founder, liberal media personality Cenk Uygur, what seems to matter the most is inflicting damage on the Democratic Party. The group's website features an image of a sledgehammer smashing the D logo of the Democratic National Committee and declares it's time to rebuild the Democratic Party from scratch. It appears as though the sledgehammer smashing the D triggered him. Not mentioned hardly anywhere on the site is Trump. Critics say Uygur's slash-and-burn approach to the Democratic Party is little more than an opportunist attempt to corner the media market for disaffected liberals, and that now he and his ilk are trying to do the same for politics. So he is assassinating Jenks' character, and he's very deliberately implying that he's an opportunist. I mean, he didn't imply it, he explicitly stated he's an opportunist. He thinks that the Justice Democrats is an opportunistic movement. Never mind the fact that you don't see Jenks' face anywhere on the Justice Democrat website, and it's just all policy substance. Never mind that fact. But, because he disagrees with Justice Democrats, he's trying to slander Jenks because you can't really argue with them based on the substance. They have a point. If the Democratic Party is not going to change, then you have to take them over. So he criticizes the Justice Democrats and these organizations because they threaten the status quo. And Alex Seitz Wall likes the status quo because they give him access. And it's unacceptable. And this is the point, though, that Cenk made in his response to Alex. But I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous to me because he states again, not mentioned hardly anywhere on the site is Trump. Again, we can have two goals. We can criticize the Democratic Party and also hold Donald Trump accountable. We're capable of multitasking. It's a thing. You know that, right, Alex? But, he thinks that you should focus all of your energy on Donald Trump, and so long as the Democratic Party, they remain just marginally less shitty than Republicans, well, then there's nothing to worry about with Democrats. Again, if Democrats hadn't betrayed the public and became corporatists in the first place, the Republicans wouldn't have won the White House and Congress and state legislators and a majority of governorships across the country. So if you are honestly telling me that we shouldn't criticize Democrats, then good luck having Republicans in office for a lot longer because they're never going to know what's wrong if you don't criticize them. Now, I want to get back to this idea that we are subjecting corporate Democrats to an ideological purity test because this ideological purity test, this theoretical purity test, is pretty easy to pass if you ask me, because what we're asking really is for you to get on the side of policy issues that the American people agree with, like getting money out of politics, supporting a single-payer healthcare system, ending unnecessary wars, breaking up the big banks. We want you to represent us and not the billionaires and not the multinational corporations, but to support these ideas. You have to stop being corporate stooges because so long as you take corporate money, your donors won't allow you to represent us. So, the ideological purity test is that you represent us. That's what democracy is about. So I wouldn't even call it an ideological purity test. I would call it just a test of whether or not you're reasonable or not. Do you take money from billionaires and expect people who you will not represent to support you? Then you're not reasonable. You don't pass our test. So spare me on this ideological purity test nonsense. Now, as he is complaining about this, as the Democratic Party establishment is bemoaning progressive challenges to the left, this story just broke in the Daily Beast. The Democratic Party's top officials will meet with some of their wealthiest donors in Washington, D.C. this week to plot the Trump resistance, according to documents obtained by the Daily Beast. The chairs of the Democratic National Committee and the party's House and Senate campaign arms will huddle with activists, operatives, and deep-pocketed Democratic financiers at a biannual conference hosted by the Democracy Alliance, a leading left-wing donor collaborative at Washington's ritzy Mandarin Oriental Hotel. The alliance brings together high-dollar liberal donors, individuals, labor unions, and charitable foundations that pledge to give at least $200,000 annually to left-wing organizations. Through its partners, as the donors are known internally, the alliance in 2015 raised $75 million for its supported organizations, an annual record for the group. Those include the Center for American Progress, a liberal policy shop that has turned its 501c4 arm into an anti-Trump war room, and Media Matters for America, a media-focused rapid response group that has recently retooled its efforts toward fake news and pro-Trump disinformation. Donors in attendance will include Michael Vichon, a top aide to billionaire hedge fund manager George Soros, healthcare technology mogul Paul Egerman, Dallas philanthropist Naomi Aberle, Susan Sandler, the daughter of subprime mortgage pioneer Herb Sandler, and Ian Simmons, the husband of Hyatt Hotel fortune heiress Liesl Pritzker Simmons. So, as progressives, as citizens, as longtime Democratic Party loyalists, cry out to the party and beg them to represent their interests and not the interests of their donors. They have the nerve to bemoan these ideological purity tests and say, you shouldn't try to push us further to the left. All that we are asking is for you to represent voters and not donors. It's extremely simple. To call it an ideological purity test is unreasonable, I think. It's just a test of whether or not you're actually going to do what you are elected to do. Represent your constituents, not your donors. And Tom Perez, he's actually going to be speaking at this event, and he's doing exactly what he was elected to do. Keep the money train rolling in. So he's going to be taking questions from billionaire donors and these super PACs. Not joking. Someone who is the head of the resistance for Donald Trump, Tom Perez, he is further making the Democratic Party entrenched in billionaire money and super PAC money and dark money. Now, another aspect of the story is that the people involved with the anti-Trump war room and Media Matters, David Brock and whatnot, these are all the people who were surrogates for Hillary Clinton that lost. They've shown that they are not capable of winning against Donald Trump, and they are in charge of challenging Donald Trump now. They're doubling down on a losing strategy. And furthermore, Hillary Clinton outraised Donald Trump by a 2-1 margin, and he still defeated her. Money isn't everything. You actually have to win over voters because money does not translate directly into votes. It goes only so far, but if you don't have the grassroots momentum behind you, you cannot win elections, Democrats. It's very clear. And to state that doesn't mean I'm subjecting you to an ideological purity test. I'm telling you that if you want to be electorally viable, you must represent the voters and not the donors. Look, I don't want to hear about these ideological purity tests, and I have absolutely no remorse for these corporate Democrats who are afraid that they will face challengers in 2018 from the left, because it's not unreasonable to expect your base to still support you if you continue to snub them and continue to sip on champagne and get cozy with liberal elites. That's not a purity test. That's called you being a bad politician and doing exactly what facilitated your losing streak in the first place. So spare me the outrage. Nobody's shedding a single tear for Democrats, okay? They did this to themselves, and we live in a democracy. So if we want to challenge these corporate Democrats with a progressive, we're entitled to do that, because if we are not being adequately represented, then we're quite literally entitled. It's in the Constitution. We can challenge them. That's why we hold elections, because we want people to represent us as well as they possibly can. And since corporate Democrats don't want to represent us, they have no interest in representing anyone but the donors, anyone but the multinational corporations, it's our right to challenge them. So don't cry about it. If you actually don't want to be challenged, then represent us. It's very simple.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.